Good morning, everyone, all the participants to our webinar about the ecosystem-based adaptation in cities. Thank you for your participation. First, I would like to ask you if you can hear me well. Please, if you can indicate it in the chat next on your right. Perfect. Okay. Well, my name is Lili Leva from Practical Solutions, and I have the pleasure to moderate the webinar from today's webinar. First, I would like to give you some technical indications about this platform. This is the VoiceBoxer platform that we're using for those who have never used it before. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, perfect. Excuse for those inconveniences. So we're going to continue. First, these presentations will have a simultaneous interpreting. So you can choose your language with the button that it's located at the bottom on the right from your screen, where it's written choose your language. If you have any problems with the audio or other kind of problems, then you can refresh this web, or maybe write to our technical assistant where the question mark is. Can you please tell me now if you can hear me well and if that you can also see me? Yes. Okay, with this, now, well, it's a pleasure to welcome you also on behalf of Practical Solutions about the ecosystem-based adaptation in cities. The community is an initiative from UN Environment through the project Regatta, which was implemented together with Practical Solutions. It has the objective to help the public workers and other professionals in order to prepare the adaptation plannings in regards to climate change in Latin America and in the Caribbean. Regarding the structure of the webinar, we have the pleasure to welcome three experts today in regards to the strategies of ecosystem-based adaptations in cities. After the first two sessions, we will have questions and answers, and after the third presentation, another session of questions. So I would thank you if you can wait until the end so you can write your questions. So I would also like to inform you that we will share these presentations and the video to all the participants after the webinar. This webinar has the objective to present advances in the adoption of new focuses in the development of strategies of adaptation in cities. Additionally, we will have also a case study about strategies of ecosystem-based adaptation in Jalapa, Mexico, within the frame of the project of the ecosystem-based adaptation in cities from UN Environment. So with this discussion, we're trying to respond to the following questions. What are the risks of climate risk that the cities are facing in Latin America and the Caribbean? What adaptation measures, ecosystem-based adaptations in cities in Latin America and the Caribbean? How can they integrate these measures in development plans or in the ordering of the lands? and what successful examples are here in the region. For that, we have the pleasure to have invited Marta Monea, the Regional Coordinator for the Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN, and Regional Coordinator of the project Ecosystem-Based Adaptation in Cities, UN Environment. Also to Manuel Vinograd. He's from the Wageningen Environmental Research, Altera, from the Netherlands, and also Sergio Angon, Project Coordinator, Ecosystem-Based Adaptation in Mexico from UN Environment. With this, it's a pleasure to welcome Marta Moneo, the Regional Coordinator for the Climate Technology Center and Network. Marta, she helps also the different countries to identify the different opportunities of transferring of technology in Latin America and in the Caribbean. She has more than 13 years of experience in the adaptation of climate change from different perspectives, research, assessment, about policies, and also implementation of projects. Before joining CTCN, she was leading initiatives of climate change in the Research Institute of Climate Impact and the Polytechnic University in Madrid. She has a master in environmental management, also in agriculture and economy of natural resources. So it is a pleasure to welcome Marta. Welcome, Marta. Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to check if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. That's great. So, welcome, everyone. Thank you, Lily and Dennis, for connecting us and for organizing this webinar. For us from UN Environment, this is very important, and we hope that it's going to be just the first of a series of webinars that we will have about these topics in the next years. As Lily was saying, we have here also Sergio and also Manuel, who will be part of this project that we have right now regarding ecosystem-based adaptation in cities in Latin America and the Caribbean, in which Mexico, El Salvador, and Jamaica participate. It is a very interesting project for us from UN Environment. We are the agency that supports the different countries in regards to adaptation to climate change from the perspective of the ecosystems, the protection and also restoring of ecosystems. But to be honest, until now our work was always focused on the rural environment, or maybe the protected areas that were far from the cities. However, especially now in Latin America, more than 70% of the population are living in the cities. And these cities are growing quite fast. They are developing quite fast, and sometimes in a very disordered way. Depending on the size of the cities, we can observe that the big cities, for example, sometimes even the ecosystems have disappeared, or the constructions have surpassed the ecosystems, and the ecosystems are not functional within the cities. However, there are other cities that are not that big, where also there are processes of growing in a very disordered way, and not really looking at the ecosystem in which the cities are developed. And that generates a lot of problems, as Lily was saying. I'm just talking about the risk part, because it generates many problems like floods, problems of security, or like water access, good water. So from UN Environment, we've started this project in these 3 different cities in Latin America, but also we have another project in Asia, and we're working with other 4 cities in Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia to work on this topic. to try to define what are we talking about when we're talking about adaptation, ecosystem-based adaptation within the urban context. And then we realize that there are many possibilities. There are ecosystems within the cities, and obviously the cities are within other ecosystems. So what is the influence on how you manage these ecosystems surrounding a city, and what are the impacts of that management on that city? We're talking about a city that is within a basin. What is the effect of the conservation of the basin, or maybe the rainforests that are close to the river, the use of the land in the superior basin from the city? It does have an impact maybe on the floods, on the water flow to the cities, and the quality of the water. So from UN environment, I don't want to explain a little bit more about the technical, because Manuel and Sergio, I know that they are the experts on this topic. Just wanted to tell that from UN environment, we are trying to support the different governments in this topic in different ways. One is through the mobility of funds, international funds. The project that we're implementing right now is being funded by the GEF Fund, which is the International Environmental Fund. And in this new round of funding, it has a program or a special mention in regards to the cities. A new source of funding is the Green Fund of the Weather, and many of you know it already. And it's quite interesting because when we're working on adaptation based on ecosystems within the cities, you can find actors that normally were not participating in this ecosystem-based adaptation when we were working in the rural areas or protection areas. In regards to the cities, sometimes it's easier to get the attention and the interest of the private sector, for example, because these private initiatives and businesses are affected in a more direct way, or they can see the risk more directly into their supply chain in the city. So it is easier to identify the interest groups that can participate in these initiatives. So, as I was mentioning, so we are supporting these countries to mobilize these funds from international funds, and also, as Lily was mentioning, right now coordinating this program that is the Climate Technology Center Network, that also funds technical assistance for up to $250,000 when the countries are requesting. In every country there's a focus, and these organizations that send the request to the CTCM, and the idea is to favor the transfer of technology within countries. So this could be a very interesting area to explore, since there are other countries in other parts of the world that are already developing experiences of adaptation in the cities, and maybe that they do not exist here. So these technical assistants are focused on that, on learning or bringing technology or knowledge from other countries, and also from organizations, maybe private or universities, NGOs, that are developing technologies and knowledge that are relevant for the countries of the region, and to fund these technical assistance to the countries from Latin America and the Caribbean. So on my part, this is all. So now we'll continue with Manuel and Sergio, who can share a little bit more from the technical part of what of this adaptation and what measures we can take. Thank you very much, and if there's any questions, I will be here. Thank you very much, Marta, for your giving this introduction about the urgency of reducing the different climate risks in different cities in Latin America and in the Caribbean, and also the need to learn about what is the roles of the ecosystems within that context. Also, thank you for giving us a view about the activities that UN Environment is involved in regards to to ecosystem-based adaptation in cities. Thank you very much, and with that, we'll continue with our second speaker. And it will be a pleasure to present you Manuel Winograd. Manuel is currently professor in environmental research in Atera in the Netherlands. He was also the main coordinator in the Natural Systems and Vulnerability of the European Agency in Denmark. He also was, as a scientific senior in CIRAD in France. He was the main scientist in the use of the soil in Colombia, and also he was a senior scientist in the group of analysis of ecological systems from the Bariloche Foundation. He had a PhD in tropical ecology from the University in Toulouse in France, and masters in environmental management in Paris, and also biology of populations also in Paris. Manuel, he will be presenting about the participatory planning for climate resilience in Latin American cities, approach, results, and lessons learned. So it is a pleasure to welcome Manuel. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Because of a connection problem, I'm just going to I'm not very sure if you can see me, but Manuel, so you can see that Manuel is real, and I'm just going to leave just I'm going to cut my video, so I'm going to be sure that this is not interrupted. So I'm going to do this presentation. I would like to thank Lily and Dennis, and also Marta, for thinking about our project to disseminate the results, and so that the project also was live and corresponds to these objectives of this kind of webinar. And we think it's an excellent way of disseminating the results. I will try to go fast because you have also the presentation, and as you know, at the end you can also contact me so we can share more information and details. Well, the first thing I wanted to present you is that the objective of this project. First of all, I would like to tell you that this is part of an initiative of CDKN and the seed from Canada that was coordinated with the Foundation, Latin American Foundation in Ecuador, Future, and it has 6 projects in different 15 cities in Latin America, with the objective to look for how you can build resilience in different intermediate cities where we can find more difficulties in cities because they grow quite fast, and sometimes they don't have mobility or access to resources, not from the donors or from the cities. So this project is an initiative, and it's called CD, and it's the construction of resilience to climate. So it was based on these kind of cities. In our case, as you will see now, the objective was to apply a methodology, practical, and a toolbox that was flexible and that was inclusive and participatory. So in one way, it was a process to involving the actors, the areas, and also that the process would have a result to create the capacities to strengthen not only their participation, but also the way of the different actors can participate in this decision-making process. So they could be very vertical, so we can convert it in more horizontal processes. I was telling you, the initiative works on 15 cities in 8 countries. In the case of our country, we're working in 3 cities in different countries with problematic context and also regional, and also with different ecological regions. I'm not going to go into details. You have all the cities where we're working is Santa Ana, Dos Quebradas, and Santo Tomé. And each of these cities, there's an institute which is a partner of the initiative that coordinates with another partner and also a local actor that is really the one implementing the solution. For example, in the case of Santana, is the CUDR associated with the New York University with Upolmasman, that's the local partner. In the case of Dos Quebradas, it's us, and also with a partner like the CADA and the UTP, and also with the local implementator, that municipality of Dos Quebradas. The case of Santo Tomé is the International Institute of Environmental and Development from Latin America, with a local partner, the University of Litoral and the municipality of Santo Tomé. So now, just seeing what our focus is, what our approach is, it's not just doing research or develop tools. For us, the research and the tools are the means through the participatory process to ensure elements of change and impact. So in order to ensure this impact path, we start a participatory process where we have the mapping of actors, the workshops also for these tools, and finally a communication for a good exchange and capacity building. So what are we trying to do? We're trying with this process to have access to information, to identify the vulnerable people and assess their vulnerabilities. So this can be accessible by everyone. What does that allows us? This allows us through workshops to change the decisions, and also especially to change also this idea of trying to predict the future, maybe to explore alternatives or options to see what happens if I do this or these other options. If this actor happens, so this is going to impact to this other actor. So we can create the capabilities, and this way we can influence in the decision making. So this way we will be able to define a portfolio of options and also ensure the implementation. So now what we're doing within this process that I just described, as I was telling you, we do a mapping of actors, but especially we do a mapping of to identify the relationships flows, which is the really important part. Not knowing that just there's one actor or two, but we need to understand that they are collaborating or what are the ones that are in conflict. That's going to help us to improve the process. Through these different interviews, we identify the preparation and how we're going to do the workshops. So in the different cities, there are no workshops where we are talking about everything and then we lose the connection. In regards to the lessons learned from this first part of the process, we realized that one of the most important things is that it's not just to have the information. We realized that it is very difficult for the municipalities and the different actors to use the available information that in many cases is a lot of information, but in different formats. And also, all the different actors, they have information that are really useful, especially in regards to vulnerability and the different adaptation processes. So, well, we have to be very aware that this participation has the danger to change, to be a permanent deliberation, and can be also promote political personal agendas. However, the current information allow us to do different evaluation exploration processes that are transparent. So in this way, we can make that the participatory processes can be differentiated from presence and assistance, because the whole community goes, but we need to do is that they have to be involved and they have to be committed in the different decision-making processes, so they can have a say on the different actions. Regarding the second part of the process, which is the most interesting, and now we're just talking a little bit more about the ecosystem-based areas. So these are just examples, and I can send you more information later about how each of the different cities, we're not only working in just the city, but also we're working in what is the city as a unity, and where it is the urban, the peri-urban, and the rural from the city. So that's what I'm trying to show in these three really quick slides. where you can see the different images that I hope that you can see. That the important part that also in the city and also in the expansion cities, that normally the peri-urban cities and rural cities, the actions were identified and different actors that can contribute in order to define an option portfolio that could be implemented and can be done. So now we're going to see a little bit more of the ecosystem-based options. So we wanted to avoid, I just want to say, like, just go arrive as the expert engineers that come in, and they say what to do. We were trying to do the opposite. We were trying to work horizontally. So we were identifying a portfolio of options that could help to escalate the different results to the different parts of the city, the urban city, the peri-urban, and the rural part. So after doing this type of workshops, we did some exercises of validation. Obviously, because we are in 3 cities and in 3 different contexts, 3 different actors. In each of the different workshops, they were conducted differently, but the criteria of prioritization of projects based on ecosystems that in every city were made, they had to meet 4 criteria. 1, economic and financial feasibility, because maybe you can propose like an 80 million project but cannot get funds. The second part is that the actions sometimes could be structural, regarded to the green and gray structure. For example, like restoration of ecosystems, or maybe like channeling, or like and also work on non-structural actions that sometimes are really cheap or economical measures, like implementing like the integration of governance in order to facilitate the governance. And the principle, it was a time frame that had to be shortened, like 1 to 3 years. Why? Because the authorities in the 3 municipalities where we are right now normally have 3 or 4 years there. So we need to ensure that the time where the mayor was governing, we could implement this type of actions. Also, what is it we also identify, and you can see here also, is that we identify actions that were well defined as part of the portfolio of options, and we have here 2 options. We have here Dos Quebradas. We have here, it's regarding the areas that are inside the cities and the peri-urban areas in order to integrate, but maybe if you don't know, for example, to integrate this rainforest, like from Colombia, they are quite popular, and they are good regulators of water problems. And also we identify that the linear paths, because this is an interesting combination of gray and green infrastructure, is quite useful, but the integration in upper river and also the rehabilitation of forests from the areas that were there. I'm not going to go into detail, but I was just trying to explain a little bit. We have briefs from different cities. We have also the validation reports that we can also share once I finish this webinar, and we can exchange information. And on the other side, it's just to show you that in the case of Santo Tomé, the urgencies were more. Instead of being infrastructure in the urban or peri-urban cities, it was the gray infrastructure, like, for example, drainage. So what I wanted to tell you here is that in the workshops we identified these options of ecosystem-based adaptations. They have to be a combination, and they have to be flexible, so they can incorporate not just the structural, and also measures that can focus on gray or green infrastructure. As conclusion, and as a lessons learned from these workshops, we realized that as a problem, the actors perceive that if we present maps or a series of definitions, it is like a reality for them, and it's not as a part of the exploration process. That's what we saw. Also, the other thing is that we need to understand that in this type of workshops, in these kind of processes of validation, we have to be very careful in trying to balance the participation and also the monologues of the experts, the theories and realities, or, for example, maybe closing the gap between the scientific research and the vulnerable, and especially an implementation versus the chit-chat, because it is very easy, you can be talking about things. That's why we are implementing in one of these projects in a city to see how effective it is. The other thing is that the portfolio has to be politically and socially relevant. It has to be also financially solid, so we can be sure that we can implement it. Going to the other parts, this is the last part of the project, which is the communication and dissemination. We did a series of communication means, for example, the press or guides, but especially what it was from the dissemination was the validation and exchange that allowed to participate and made project files. Marta mentioned that how the CTCN wants to ensure that the creation of capacities in different countries. So we created capacities within the cities, because, for example, the city of Dos Quebradas had a lot of capacity to reforest and a lot of experience in reforestation. So they invited the person from an NGO in Santa Ana, so that person could be trained for 1 week in order to bring the technology that the Dos Quebradas has already, so they can do reforestation, because Santa Ana, that is a similar city to Dos Quebradas, and this type of forest disappeared a long time ago, so they are trying to do some reforestation. Just to tell you that the communication and dissemination sometimes can be very concrete, and it can be done in a very focused way. So this allows us to talk about the implementation and the incidents, and also create synergies. As I explained you so right now, what we learn in these lessons that we learned in the communication and implementation, sometimes it's very difficult to assess the compensations. We wanted especially to have these kind of exploration tools, because there are no ideal solutions that help everyone. All solutions, they have some inconvenience for an actor. They are never solutions that help everyone. So the idea is to identify compensations or make a process that was more proactive than reactive, so they can build a support for these processes. So, we were working on this agenda of resilience, an ongoing process, and also we were trying to continue to influence policies and to have access to the information, and also to continue the process. In order to finish this conclusion, we are still on time, which is good. So what we learned, within the insight of the project, is that these three cities are telling us that we can do, there's impact because it creates and ensures a dialogue between actors. So also it creates awareness about the importance of the technical and political aspects. We can create capacities, and especially what I was telling at the beginning is that all the cities consider a priority to integrate urban, peri-urban, and rural areas. You cannot just think about the rural area as just an apart city, because these are the sources of water, of environmental cities, but the city, the great part, is just, another part. So integrating them, we can create also green structures. So now, these three teams that work in the cities confirm that with the different actors, that this type of processes ensures flexibility and transparency, because the dynamics of the adaptation of the climate change needs flexibility and transparency. And also, we also realize that this allows that the political agendas and pressure groups and decision are less, and also as well as the symmetries in access and production of information. Also, the conflicts in agreeing conflicts of interest decrease. This allows to improve the responses, the definition of standards, of laws and instruments, also allows to improve the evaluation of the roots of the problems and the causes, and not only being reactive of the consequences, which happens a lot regarding vulnerability and climate change. Just always thinking about what happens and not preventing. So I think that with this, although I still have 3 minutes left, I'm just going to give it for questions. So again, I want to thank Lily and Dennis and Marta for thinking about us. There are additional resources on the website. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook. You have here also my email, and from the other two people that are working on this project. And maybe, although you cannot see it here, if you want to have access to the tool is free and it's available on internet. It's called, the website is www.quickscan.pro. So you can share, you can exchange it. So I hope that it was useful. I'm sorry that I was so fast. I imagine that the interpreters are hating me, but since I only have 20 minutes, I have to go really fast. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and now we'll continue with Sergio so we can continue learning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Manuel, for this excellent presentation of the information about the project. And well, it is a project that is very complex, and it's true that it's an achievement for you to present it in just 20 minutes, the main achievements and the lessons learned. So with that, I would like to open the questions and answers session for Marta and Manuel. So we can use this time because we know that also Manuel is on the other side of this globe, so the time is different, and I believe it's nighttime. So if there's someone who wants to pose a question in the chat, you are more than welcome. And I'll thank you if you can write your question, to whom the question, and maybe write what your country is or your organization. So here I see the first question is from Carlos Joco for Manuel, and the question says, it is very important to try to talk about the short-term terms, prioritize the projects in the short term, but I think identifying projects that are chained for the execution for stages, it is, well, I think that is more like a comment, that one. I don't know if that's question. And then he continues, that's the spirit of the development plans and also the ordering of land in Ecuador. I'm going to read some of the questions before continuing. Before Manuel, there's a question from Shirley. I think this question is for Marta, and it says, where we can ask about financing projects, and this is a question more for Manuel. From Chase said in Mexico, what recommendations you can give to integrate the value of the ecosystemic values in the municipality plans? So with this first Manuel, so you can answer, and then to Marta, if you can comment. Well, in order to answer in a very quick way the question about what I was telling about the short term. Obviously, this project had just 14 months of duration. We need to make sure that something could be implemented. Obviously, we still accompany them, and we're trying to find funding, because there is for short-term and long-term projects. For example, in Dos Quebradas, we had a short-term project about the recovery of forests with a corporation from Miss Aranda. So it was a project for 12 years of integration with the conservation areas, that all the different areas there. So, but we want to insist that the politicians that do not escape, that it's not just, we should not define projects that are long-term, because it's really easy when we're talking about, long-term, but we just wanted to make sure that the projects were going to happen. And the other question is how to integrate the ecosystems services with the municipality plans. That's what happened also in the case of Santa Ana, when we had tables of climate change with the different actors, and we were lucky enough to have that. At that moment they had elections, so within the political project, because of this table and the pressure of the community, we were able to implement the ecosystem services as part of the action against the vulnerability. I don't have much time to answer, but if the person who is posing, from Mexico, is posing the question, well, we're going to start working quite soon. If we can get together and we can exchange information, maybe we could do very interesting things. On the other side, the last question about, I think it was about the participation. What kind of impact I think we have on participation? Well, the impact is that all the actors, absolutely all the actors, and work on the process, but we are outside. But since we have the local partners who are the ones that are implementing everything, and we are the ones in contact with them, we are still informed. And for example, the 3 cities, they are organizing a webinar within them, so the local actors can exchange solutions. More than a participation, I think this is a great example of participation. Thank you, Manuel, for answering those questions. So we have another more questions. I'd like to have a question for Marta from Chile. She's asking where they can find, options for funding in regards to these topics, for these projects of these topics. And also, 2 questions also for Manuel. Here's how we can convince the government of the needs of improving the green infrastructure. Also a question from Berta Cienfuegos, again from Manuel. Within this context is being associated, it's associated in resilient cities to the climate in the regional context, or maybe ecological corridors. And another question for Manuel from Carlos Vasquez. How was the initial understanding of the ecosystem-based adaptation in the process? So first Marta, she's going to answer, and then Manuel. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Lily. And also, Shirley, to answer you, these calls that I was talking before, normally they are done through a point that the different governments, normally they are like the Ministry of Environment in the different countries, and also the Climate Change Organization. I don't know what your country is, but there's more information for the technical assistance from CTCN. As I was telling you, you need to request them through this organization. It could be the ministry, or maybe any other unit, organization that is requesting this technical assistance. Could be a university, an NGO, could be a local government, could be an association of the civil society. So regarding the technical assistance from CTCN, there's more information on the website, which is www.ct/n.org. So later we can send you the link through an email. And also Lily also has my contact details, so you can get in contact with me so I can explain you more. In regards to the National Environmental Fund and from climate, these are the governments need to present the request, and these are projects that are really big. So maybe you have to go and talk with your respective institutions in your different countries to access these different funds. Thank you, Marta. So we're going to provide the link that you just mentioned, and so you can also share your contact details. So now I'm going to go with Manuel so he can answer the questions. The questions, I'm going to try to go fast. Regarding the question about Rafael, how can you convince the government about the need to improve the green infrastructure? The municipality governments, they find that it is not necessary to convince them. It is just a cost and benefit matter. For example, they think that in the linear parks, they are not very expensive and they have a lot of benefits. It's really easy to convince them because it's direct. Because, for example, in Dos Quebradas and also in Santa Ana and in Santo Tomé, before we started the project, there were these kind of solutions. This existed. The idea is to integrate the people more, so the people would be the one taking care of them. But these type of solutions, like I was telling you, as the cost and benefits are great. There's another question about within this context, how are we doing regulations? For example, one of the priority projects in Dos Quebradas, and we're implementing, is the creation of institutions where all the actors intervene, so they can monitor everything. In the case of Santo Tomé, they're implementing the ordering of the land. So, and this can be done based on and all the actors can participate. So all the regulations and the processes are happening. So we cannot be blind to thinking that everything is going to improve, because things are going to happen slowly. So in regards to the other question about how the resilience was integrated or how you're facilitating the resilience, I want to tell you that resilience as this word of fashion, but it is not in the political agenda. However, unfortunately for the city, but it's good for us, in the 3 different cities, during the process that we had, there were floods. And so in the political agenda and the urgencies, they had it there. So that allowed us to introduce resilience. And also in the meeting that we had at the end of the project, in order to promote this, the 3 different cities, they integrated themselves to the initiative of the UN environment, the reduce of risks of disasters, that is called Resilient Cities. And the final act of the project is that the 3 cities signed this commitment, so that implies that they need to meet certain objectives. So how we measure the resilience before and after, and with the different portfolio, the different projects, so they can allow to reduce the vulnerability, because this was not to be done to be published in scientific magazines. It was to provide tools to the different actors. So I don't want to spend more time. I don't know if there's another question. I just have one characteristic. I can answer all my emails. Maybe I'm not that clever, but I can answer all my emails. So if you have something pending, just send me an email. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Manuel, for providing the answers to all. I'm just hoping to connect. So we're here. I just wanted to comment to you that I'm Sergio, a little bit so I can present myself, so I can welcome you and thank Martha and Lily and Dennis to transmit this experience that we have in Jalapa. And in order to I'm going to disconnect my video. So what is ecosystem-based adaptation? I always like to start my presentations about adaptation with this very simple phrase. Ecosystem-based adaptation is basically the use of biodiversity and the services provided by ecosystems as an adaptation strategy to help people adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. In a socio-ecological system where we have the ecosystem through the different ecosystemic services, there should be an adequate good management of these systems in the use of the good use of them, so we can increase the adaptive capacity of the city so they can face the impacts of climate change. A little bit about, the people who don't know much about ecosystem-based adaptation. This is the basic cycle. So in order to be an adequate project, they need to have a good perspective of the climate and ecosystem, then conduct good vulnerability studies. After that, identify adaptation actions and prioritize and select these options. As Dennis was commenting, they have to be real objectives. It doesn't matter that to have a very extensive plan that, for example, will have a great impact, but we won't have the funds to finance them. And finally, to monitor to have the implementation and then monitor and the evaluation. Parts of the lessons learned that Emmanuel has presented that we will see also as well. So now, the ecosystem by biodiversity in cities. Well, we think about the urban and the peri-urban parts. We have the biological corridors. We have the green areas with trees and plant species, which provide ecosystem services such as recreation, improvement of air quality, carbon catch, aquifer recharge, microclimate regulation, and the slope stabilizations, among others. So these are agents that mitigate and adapt to climate change. So if we start from the interaction from the biodiversity and the climate change, not because of the results on the climate change, of also how the modification of the biodiversity is included in the climate change. So we understand the impact of the biodiversity impact and also the activities adaptation. Like Mena was saying, for not all the solutions help everyone or all the cities or all the ecosystems. So these activities to adapt to the different climate change can have positive and negative impacts on the biological diversity. So let's focus on the positive effects. For example, the increase of the landscapes, the connectivity in agricultural parts, and also in the... So understanding this, that is, instead of seeing these green areas as just protected areas by the citizens, we have to understand like areas that protect us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Jalapa city. Just a minute. So the Jalapa city, it's a city that it's very complicated in terms of risk of climate change because it has a geography that is quite complicated. As you can see in these pictures, floods are happening very often. We are very vulnerable. You can see, for example, some floods, also landslides, some types of infrastructure, green infrastructure that we try to build in order to adapt to the effects of the climate change. These are some of the, you can see, what ecosystem-based adaptation actions we have designed in this project. I want to tell you that for the design of this project, we had in instruments on climate change that report and gave the strategic lines to select and prioritize these actions. First, we have the NDCs from Mexico. We have the National Climate Change Strategy, the Special Climate Change Program, something very important that also happened here in Veracruz, were the sectorial agendas of climate change. And finally, climate change was in all the levels of the government. So that was important because that allowed us to have this project. Also, the Municipal Climate Action Plan from Jalapa from 2014-2017. And finally, the Sustainable Jalapa Plan that in 2014. Some of the risk or maybe alteration of climate change that we detected in this project, we saw the elevation of temperatures, the alteration of the rainfall, or for example, the cyclonic activity in the Gulf region, floods, alteration of ecosystems, and also there was greater deterioration of the biodiversity. The baseline, we have the Carneros River, and basically this is the graphs that we saw from the different floods. So these people, they have floods every year, and this is part of the climate change effects. So we try to build like a collector that costed 41 million pesos. These are the benefited colonies or districts. We benefited 30,000 people, and also we have a train area of 2.23 kilometers. And also, we also identified in this project something that was very important that Manuel mentioned. We mapped the key actors, like authorities that are the ones that you can see there. You have the 3 levels of government that we have in Mexico, from the national and the state and also the local. We also involved the academia and the civil society through different workshops with the objective to prioritize these actions. As you can see at the basin level, we have also the infiltration ditches, the absorption wells, payments for environmental services, we have best agricultural practices, and soil recovery, and at level of the local landscape with the restoration of streams of riparian areas, and also local sanitation of ecological and also green patches. So once we prioritize and so that the funding that we could have access to. We determine these actions at the level basin, at level of urban landscape, and local level. I'm not going to explain much about this. You can read them later. And there's some of the maps that we created for the design of these actions. Some of these production activities, the production of mushrooms and also agro-silvopastoral systems. Some of matters regarding connectivity within the systems, like prototypes of infiltration trails, the demonstration modules, linear gardens, and something that in Jalapa, it is very complicated about the sanitation of water. So we're also proposing about an artificial wetland that is trying to treat the dark waters and maybe return them to the stream with a better quality of water. So something very important, which is the objective of all these projects from UN Environment, is to create capacities to have a community of knowledge, and the objective is to influence on short and medium term planning, urban planning, through workshops, courses, analysis, design public policies, forums, and this is addressed to key actors that we have already identified and local governments. And this is sustained on basic science and applied science. I want to commend you that in the session of the technical committee of this project, we had a great participation from the academia. There was a researcher that was saying that this project is the perfect opportunity to get together with the applied science and the basic science. So we can have these processes that are participatory and allow us to provide better solutions for the cities. And finally, I would like to mention that in many of these cases, there are possibilities to improve the positive effects and reduce the negative effects on these ecosystem-based adaptation. What instruments do we have with, for example, environmental evaluations of the environmental impact evaluation, and something that Manuel was explaining about an adequate evaluation of the technology impact through the different tools that can facilitate the study of multiple alternatives. That means a lot of simulations, what happens if we take this action or this other, with the objective to help, so the key actors so they can decide better. In regards, also would like to mention that in regards to the design of these actions, of the ecosystem-based actions, is we need to take into account that we try to keep preserve the ecosystems, interconnect them so they resilience can be bigger. We need to understand that we can restore the degraded ecosystems and to try to avoid the reduction of the natural resources, and also finally to gather and disseminate the different knowledge of the ecosystem-based adaptation based on our traditional practices, and also the local knowledge. It's important also to gather that, and also the benefits that we should consider is that these actions, they need to have an added value. For example, in an agro-silvopastoral system, for example, the cattle should not only have better life conditions, but also the surrounding ecosystem should benefit from that. So if we tell that to the farmer, then the farmer will think, oh, I need to have more cost, I don't have much money to support this. But with an adequate design of agro-silvopastoral system, we have showed, for example, here in Veracruz, that if we plant special trees, fruit trees, we can improve the area, and maybe, and also we can increase the money that the farmers will earn, because, and it can double the income because of and also because they're going to improve the grass. And also something very important is that so we can learn in this kind of experience, we can learn from everyone. I hope that I was not so fast, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you very much, Sergio, for giving us this presentation and giving us this perception of how this project is happening in Mexico. So we have here some questions. The first question from Zoraida. She's asking if there was participation from the private sector on the project, and if you could explain what the role was. And also we have here a question from Marta, from INEC. So when do you want to implement one of the actions of the project, and how are you expecting to strengthen so that these actions are funded for more time? So now, Sergio. So let's see if we have another questions. Thank you, Sergio. Now, if you can answer. Well, thank you, Zoraida. Participation of private sector, it's fundamental because of that interaction between the key actors that Manuel was saying. Not all actions are good for everyone or are helpful to everyone. So in regards to those actions, we also included the private sector. However, we didn't have a lot of people there. But right now in implementation, we will have to include them with the objective that they can perceive these actions as an added value to their products or their services that they're offering in the area. For example, a linear garden that we're planning, it will improve some locals in this project. So maybe they will see that these actions are good for everyone and we are going to get benefits, not just the ecosystems. And Marta, when do we want to implement this? Well, this is the first year of the project. We are about to get the terms of reference to implement some actions. And also we have some modules of agro-silvopastoral systems, also modules of eatable mushrooms, in order to improve the vulnerability conditions and also the nutrition of some people in the rural and urban areas, and also 2 modules of water catchments, so we can manage better the water from the rain here in Jalapa. For those who don't know Jalapa, it rains a lot here in Jalapa, and with this climate change, now it rains more in short periods of time. So we need to take advantage of this, and maybe they should be part of the public policies that they have been modified here. So now in all new construction, they need to have special drains. So, and now builders and people that decide to improve their houses, they have to include this type of technology to face the climate changes. Thank you, Sergio, for answering these questions. There are 2 more questions here for you. One is from Esteban, from Chile. Well, within your environment, you have tools, and you have, within the region, in Concon, we are having a process of governance to preserve our wetlands. And we are also calling key actors if we can have contact with you in environment so we can help get some support. Well, I can add you here that we are going to send you the contact details of Marta and Sergio as well. So if you want to contact them directly. And there's another question here from Jesus Velasquez. If you measure the implementation impact and what are the specific benefits for the citizenship. So with this question, please, Sergio, if you can answer. And after Marta, if she can complement with an answer to Esteban's question. Thank you. Thank you, Lily. Well, Jesus, so the cycle of the ecosystem-based adaptation, there's a monitoring system so we can monitor the impact of these actions. So recently this year we will start implementing these type of actions here in Mexico, and obviously the idea is to measure the impact of the implementation of this project. I want to tell you that we have a proposal for the construction of the capacity index of the city based on the economy-based adaptation with measurable tools. So through these different actions, we will be able to measure the different adaptation and also evaluate the impact in the different areas, for example, in the metropolitan area of Jalapa. And obviously, we will have to propose, and we're hoping to learn also from all of you and from Manuel, the communication strategy that allows to disseminate the goods, the impact. And also we need to have a good impact on the social area. And also, Esteban, from UN Environment, we can help you. I think Marta, she's the person to answer this question. And thank you. Thank you very much, Sergio. There's one question for you from Zoraida Chung in the city of Panama. It's about the vulnerability of climate change. It has to do with the disorder of the cities and the invasion of the ecosystems. It seems that it's the same situation in both cases. So how valid it is to have these kind of projects as adaptation projects when the flood disasters are happening for more than 20 years. So Sergio, and then Marta will answer. Thank you, Lily. Well, Zoraida, yes. When we're talking about the urban topics, it's important. I'm going to give you the example of Jalapa. Jalapa, in the last 30 years, its urban footprint has grown 7 times. So that means that the natural territory has expanded 7 times, and the population has doubled. So what does that happen? There is a huge growth of the urban, and it has been very disordered, and right now we are suffering the consequences. It was not free that, for example, areas that had names like Represo de Carmen or Sumidero or La Lagunilla, like the lake, that they are flooded. Historically, these were areas that were quite low areas, but the urban growth has favored or has allowed that people are there and they have increased the vulnerability. I want to tell you that in Jalapa, we have an atlas of risk, and we all have to look at it when when we want to, for example, buy a piece of land. And also we are preparing in Mexico through the National Institute of Climate Change a national plan of vulnerability, and it has the objective to make better decisions when you're giving licenses to build in different lands. And this is very important, the urban area, in order to measure the impact in the decisions in regards to adaptation, and that you can propose in an urban area. Thank you. Thank you, Sergio. Well, here we have another question. That will be the last question for this session. The question is from Maria Loaiza from Colombia. She says, it is important to know the role of the person before the ecosystem services. This allows to have good processes with sensitive communities. How can you protect that sensitivity in the different processes that can put in danger important resources? This is a question. So, Manuel, maybe with this we can close the Q&A session. Thank you. Thank you, Lily. Well, I want to tell you that this project, that's what we're looking for, to provide real alternatives that not just like benefit these people in the peri-urban areas of Jalapa, but also to increase their adaptation capacity before the climate change. We know that the knowledge, the local knowledge, and the management of the forests that they have in Jalapa has been really well. We still have a lot of forests here. This project also looks to create fair trade and also the local trade. What we're trying also is to provide these alternatives that have economical benefits, so these people who are helping us to take care of the ecosystem services, like the provision of clean water that we have here in Jalapa, so and also they can help these people. They can help us, in the upper part, and they can get payment for environmental services. But also, there has to be an integral management of our basin and understand and make authorities understand at all levels that today this management of the basin is quite current, the management of the upper basin, because they are providing us services, but we also think about the sustainable use, so the people from the lower part of the basin can enjoy these ecosystem services that the upper basin provides. So definitely the local knowledge has been important, and I know that it's going to be even more important when we start this action about ecosystem-based adaptation. Thank you. Thank you, Sergio, for answering all the questions. Well, with this, I would like to close this session, or the Q&A session. It's been a pleasure. And I would like to thank the three different speakers, to Marta Moneo, to Manuel, and Sergio, for the excellent contribution to the discussion of the role of the ecosystem-based adaptation on reducing the climate risks and strengthening the resilience in urban areas. I confirm that I will share this recording and also the presentations of this webinar after, Thank you all the participants, and thank you for the active participation and the interesting questions. Some of the key points I think that we can get from this webinar is that to know the importance of the participation process, and especially to try to look for a focus from down to the upper part for this ecosystem-based adaptation in cities, considering that cities as analysis units and all the parts like the urban part, peri-urban, and the links with the rural areas as well. Something also important that Sergio mentioned is that the sections also, they have to provide an added value, so we can involve more actors. So with that, I would like to thank your participation, and we hope to see you in our next webinar. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, you can contact me, and also we're going to share the emails of the different speakers, in case you have an additional questions that we couldn't address here. Thank you very much and have a nice day.